Good evening, everybody, and welcome to California Free Radio. I'm Mike Netter, accompanied by Scott Piotr and Kurt English, as we are every week. Say
Hey,
hi.
Mike.
Let's start off with the reminders we always do. This show is streaming live. It is streaming live on @NetterMike on X, @TextFighter7.com, on LinkedIn, where we're going to put it into various groups under Mike Netter, and on our Facebook groups and under Mike Netter, and along with our YouTube channel, Outraged. And there's a lot to be outraged about. Tonight, we're going to talk about what you may have forgotten a little bit. Gentlemen, let's open and talk about what Gavin Newsom was ranting and raving about, because I got a pretty good opening rant here.
You mean he was raving? You mean more than normal?
More than normal, because today, Gavin Newsom, and I want you to pay very close attention to this right now.
Hold it. Let me write this down.
You should write it down. Gavin Newsom is out there talking about defending democracy, and he held a big press conference in Los Angeles today. That big press conference, we believe, was sponsored with government money, which is illegal, because it is about the ballot measure that Gavin wants to put on the ballot to change back what the people have voted in, which is to let an independent commission draw congressional seats. He's doing this supposedly to defend democracy. I'm going to be very clear here why I think he's doing this, and I want you to pay close attention. Gavin Newsom is actually doing this because he's raising money. And speaking as one of the main proponents of the recall.
Wait a minute. What's he raising money for?
I'm getting there. Stick with me. Because
Okay.
I know a lot about the legalities of this, because Rebuild California, which we often ask you to donate to, are really the political PAC, which was started for the recall of Gavin Newsom. So we have restrictions on it. What isn't known to many of you out there, that when you have an initiative, a recall is an initiative, you're allowed to raise unlimited sums of money, no limits. Somebody could donate $1 million. It's not like running for office, but there are limits.
You have campaign contribution limits.
Right, but there are limits on what you can use the money for. One of the things I'm not proud to say is that we're kind of responsible for the Defend Democracy PAC that Gavin Newsom has today. That $20 million, which is in it, gents, is left over from.
I'm sorry, did you say 20 million?
He had $20 million left over from his recall funds. He raised 90, spent 70 against Orrin Heatley and our motley crew, and he had $20 million left over. Now he walks the line, because you can't do that for federal offices. You can't donate with it to federal candidates. Kurt, you know this, being an attorney, and he runs around on that PAC's dime. But let me ask you two a question before we get to the main part of our show tonight. Okay?
Hey, turn your ringer off.
I just did. And everybody, I see people texting me about the show. Let me get to the main part right now. Kurt, let me ask you a question. Hi. You're a pretty smart guy. You're on the air with us. Why do you think Gavin is actually doing this? I mean, it shows that even when he gets it on the ballot through the legislature, it's not a slam dunk. There's a huge political risk of doing this. He already gets to answer your next question, or answer, plenty of national exposure. He doesn't need to do that. Why do you think he's actually doing this?
Because he's running for president, and he's a narcissist, and he hasn't been getting enough attention.
Here's the real reason I think he's running. He wants to. Now, everybody out there, I want you to think about this. Gavin did a big press conference today, which might have been on the government tab. And if you watch my X feed @NetterMike, that's actually not legal. But we have an attorney general in California that, of course, is Newsom's lapdog and doesn't prosecute him for it.
That's being generous.
The feds might come after him for it. But here's the interesting part. So Charles Munger and other people are going to put in money to keep what the people voted in.
Wait a minute, Mike. Didn't Charles Munger just die?
No. Charles Munger Jr. actually is,
Oh,
who's
okay. Just
actually
checking.
older than we are all put together still. Okay. And he's the one who actually put these initiatives on the ballot. And Gavin's out there chiding him to put a bunch of money in against it so he can raise a bunch of money. Now, I want everybody to think very carefully about this before we get to the meat of our show this night, because I really believe that they're related. If Gavin, and he will, gets this through the legislature, it's about 2.5 months. And why the press out there, and I talked to a number of members of them today, of the press today, our focus state will pay for the election. Gavin Newsom is going to raise $500 to $800 million for basically a 2.5 month run where less people will turn out for this special election than probably fit in a minivan. But they're going to raise a lot of money and they'll have a lot of money left over. Now, Gavin Newsom and your press office, which follows me, and I'll leave that alone because I don't want to insult anybody on the air, although I do on the X feed. Pay attention. We're watching how you transfer that money. Because to answer your question, Kurt, I believe he's doing this not to raise his profile. He's got a big one already. The political risk is actually very, very huge because if he loses, tremendous mud on his face. But the dollar upside as to what he can raise and then shift it to possibly using a run for president is really what his goal is. But that's actually illegal. And before, when he shifted his money, it was a friendly administration. Not that we had one, but Alex, who wasn't paying a lot of attention. He's today, who working for the federal attorney general office, we're going to keep his eye on him. Now, tonight, what I want to focus on, though, why Gavin Newsom is running around, and I gave you one personal story about the recall. Here's another personal
Well, Mike,
story.
there's one other thing about this that's important, and that's that with California's fake ballots and the lack of ballot security, they're going to try to stuff the ballot box with this initiative.
But I get that, but it's not that important that it passed to Gavin. What's important to him is that he raised money. That, to me, is the prime reason he's doing it. And yes, you're right, Kurt. They're going to try to stuff the ballot box. They know we're watching there, which actually is a good lead into what I want to talk about here. Because why we're paying attention to this, again, another personal story. Most of you out there who watch us or watch me on a regular basis, my house burned in 2007 in the San Diego fires. And it's really hard for the media to kind of ignore that when the fires are burning. It's very easy for the media to start to ignore it after a couple months. And that's what myself and my family went through. And the challenge we have is now the city and county of Los Angeles are paying attention, saying, well, what did Maui do? What happened in Maui? And most of you, this is a California show, right? You paid attention to Maui when it was on the news. And then again, it kind of fades because you're not going through what the people in Maui are going through. So tonight we have a very special guest who's written a great book about the similarities between what happened in Maui and what's happening in Los Angeles. And before we bring Michelle on, I want to be very clear here that it's important that we continue to pay attention to this. That Gavin is like a magician, but he doesn't pull a rabbit out of a hat. He pulls corruption out of his posterior. And why he wants us to pay attention to things like, oh, I'm redistricting. Oh, I'm running for president. Oh, Donald Trump. Again, had a big concert. Where did the money go? It went to a nonprofit that Gavin started. The question really becomes, how did the fires start? What's happening in Maui today? And speaking from San Diego, where I was living on my house burned, is how's it going for you out there with the government that's in charge? Scott, bring on our guest, Michelle. And then I want you gentlemen to ask her about her background and let her talk. I'm going to go off camera for 1 second and do so. Michelle, welcome to California Free Radio. And by the way, it's one of the few things in California which is free because, like Hawaii, we pretty much charge for everything. Tell us,
Well,
the
yes.
audience, about you,
Or get
where you're
taxed.
from, and what got you into this, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, mahalo
Michelle,
for having me.
Michelle, one more quick thing. We really got interested in this because Karen Bass, mayor of LA, actually invited the Maui officials on how they should rebuild. In other words, she's trying to learn from the Maui officials what's the right way to do things.
Mhm.
And it didn't seem to me like Maui is doing it right. So that's why you're here and your expertise. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, again, mahalo for having me. Thank you for having me. My home state is California. I grew up near Chico, California. I went and visited the Paradise Fire when that happened. Many of the same anomalies, you guys, many of the same anomalies in the Tubbs Fire, Paradise Fire, Maui, and Los Angeles. And this was an attack on the people. And I do say that wholeheartedly. I have done there's over 200 sources in my book about why this happened, who possibly is behind it, and the anomalies. So I just want to say thanks again for having me. My main background is I've been a fitness and wellness trainer expert since 1996 for over 30 years. My first book was End Dieting Hell, How to Find Peace in Your Body and Release the Weight. It won 4 awards. It was published July 2019. And I didn't mean to write this book, but what happened was I saw that the Hawaii governor went to the United Nations to tell everybody that the Maui fire happened because of climate change. That's when I stood up and was like, okay, I need to look into this deeper. People, if you go to World Climate Declaration, go to World Climate Declaration, just put that in your URL, a document will come up and you will see almost 2,000 credentialed scientists from around the world that say there's no climate emergency. Is there climate change? Yes, happens every moment of the day, but climate emergency is something different. Climate danger, something different. So when the Hawaii governor went to speak to the United Nations, which why does a governor go to speak to the world leaders? There's no reason for that. And then he touts climate change. You know, I started looking deeper, interviewed a 33-year fire captain, retired fire captain, and interviewed a 48-year arborist that has gone to over 100 fire locations, Robert Bram. And he says, Michelle, a handful of them are normal. He said the trees that didn't burn should have, and the trees that did burn should not have. And in my book, you're going to see pictures of the Tubbs Fire, LA, Paradise, and Maui, all with homes dissolved into white ash, no refrigerator, no stove, no toilet, but the entire forest in Paradise is still standing up. All of the trees are still standing. We have palm fronds, we have palm trees still standing up next to houses that are white ash, next to cars that are melted, no glass, melted out glass, dissolved engine blocks, but the palm fronds right above them are still there. That's impossible in a regular fire. So
What explains that?
what explains? I actually asked the arborist, I said, how is this possible? I said, how do trees not burn? He said, Michelle, the chemistry of the fire doesn't recognize the organic material. The chemistry, he said, this is a microwave frequency chemical fire. This is from microwave energy. And there's many other, we have much more evidence that this is true. One being the fact that animals and people did not burn. They were charred. They were, this one dog was in the middle of the street. This picture's in my book. A dog, a cat, these animals, they're charred. But the inside is hollow. And the dog is actually in the middle of the street. You have his ears, his nose, his paw pads. You can see his fur. You can see the angle of his fur. That's impossible. There was a child that was found holding his dog, and the body was completely recognizable. And the mother said she believes that God left him that way so that she would recognize him. That's not how people are.
Michelle, let's jump to a couple things that are similarities. And first off, I want to say on your other book, You were kind enough to send me both of them. And considering my age and condition, I know you think I'm a prospect, but I'm more of a prospect for the fire book. So let's talk about that a little bit. One of the things when we talk about similarities here, and again, we're not big conspiracy theorists here, but I think there's some facts, and let's roll with those for a second, okay? And having been through a devastating fire, there are many strange things that would happen. But let's focus on a couple of them. One, let's talk about how's the rebuilding going? Because while I was doing a little social media business, I said, is Michelle talking about Los Angeles? Or is she talking about the San Diego fire that I was in? Or are you talking about Maui? It's not going well, is it? How many homes in Maui would you say have been rebuilt?
So after a year, one house was rebuilt. 0 businesses have been allowed to rebuild. 0 businesses, 0 homes on the coast. Now I think there's about 8 houses that have been rebuilt, mostly, but they're not on any part of the coast. And again, 0 businesses. The last time I went, which was a couple months ago, it still looks like a war zone. It literally still looks like a war zone. Completely like, and people are having a really hard time getting permits, as I've heard. LA is
correct. That's what I want to cover. Things in common here a little bit, right? So some of the things in common. First off, let's put this directly on the table. Here's something that's in common. Both Hawaii and California are run by Democratic governors, and Democratic government that doesn't seem to really care about the people in spite of the hyperbole that they put in the press. So, as I believe I saw in Maui, which was even in the news today, they were going to immediately waive a bunch of permits and do a bunch of stuff, and that hasn't been done. I'm going to ask you, acting like the counselor like Kurt, is that true, yes or no?
Yes, that is very true. Yes,
okay.
People are having a hard time rebuilding there.
Now, what's
just so everybody remembers, the fire in Maui was August of 23, so it was only about 16 months before the Palisades fire.
That's right. We just had our 2nd year anniversary.
Okay. Well, so to your point, it's very important that they rebuild Lahaina town, and even if they have to raise the elevation of some of those waterfront businesses.
The water level's not rising. That's what people, my family's been here on the islands for 30 years. And even there's an MIT professor that talks about the how to measure sea level rising. And it's not how we think it is. It's actually the plate tectonics are the ones that the earth is actually what moves and what changes. But no, zero rebuilding right now. And they actually, with what I saw with LA, with the eminent domain, there was actually, Hawaii is set to be the first smart island in 2015. Japanese and Hawaii stakeholders decided without legislation, without public testimony, that Maui was going to be the first smart island. And I know that LA, a smart city, I think 2028, something like that. And so we have that. We also have the fact that the trees didn't burn in Los Angeles either. I actually saw this reporter doing a story, and the picture comes up of Altadena, and all the houses are white ash, but all the shrubs are there. All of the trees are still standing. She says nothing about the trees still standing with their leaves fully intact. I mean, it's...
Let's talk about a couple of interesting commonalities you talk about in your book. Mm-hmm. One is... and again, the tragic part is, and this is, I want to talk more, even not California versus Hawaii. This is the government in Maui versus the government of Los Angeles County. Because in San Diego, where we had, again, I'm speaking from experience having been through this, we had some people die, not very many, because we got good early warning. Los Angeles, and this is really the separate. I'm not a climate change advocate. When I was a young man, which I understand was a long time ago, Ben Franklin and I used to call it weather. Okay? So let's put all that down for 1 second. Fair enough, everybody? Okay? But let's talk about this, okay? The lack, again, Scott, you had talked to me the other day, okay? That in itself is a newsflash. But how this recorded conversation with Karen Bass, okay? They knew there were fire conditions. Fire is not new to California. It's not new to Hawaii. It's not a new phenomenon caused by climate change. And Karen Bass is on record with a recorded call saying, hey, looks like we've got fire conditions. Strikes me as a similarity. We didn't do a very good job of one, preparedness in California, or even warning citizens as the fires started. Is that similar to what we saw in Maui?
100%. 100%. We have the best warning system in the world that wasn't turned on. People get alerts on their phones. We just had a tsunami warning. Every other hour, I got a text message saying, "Get to high ground. There's a tsunami warning." Our the alarm system went off every other hour for this possible tsunami, which ended up being a 6-foot wave. Nothing. But Maui got zero. In fact, there was the electricity and the phone service was turned off in Lahaina prior to the fire, in the morning of the fire.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you with your flow because you're knowledgeable in this. And again, of the four of us, I'm probably the dumbest. So I'm going to ask you to go slow for me. Okay,
Sure.
so let me make this very clear. Okay, so, and again, for Californians, what you're talking about with the tsunami, and again, I want to stress this point. We get involved with shiny objects. We got tsunami warnings here too. I got one, and I live inland by 60 miles, okay? And the tsunami warnings are all over the place. They're cleaning it up. And for everybody out there, I would also like to tell you, you got a lot of warnings, and I'm sorry, I've got to throw this in for all my conservative friends about Hurricane Hillary, which was hitting California. And I would like to know that Hillary did extensive damage to me last fall as it messed my hair. But we got tons and tons and tons of warnings on that. But similar, very few warnings that the fire condition existed, similar to Maui, right? Now let's go one step further. People in charge of government, Scott and Kurt, you ready? And Scott, put up a picture of Karen Bass if you can here, not to scare our audience off there, but maybe attract the 5 liberals which watch us. Okay, Karen.
You need a bag over her head in the picture.
It's hard to tell if she has one or doesn't, but let's put that down for 1 second. Bass was well aware days ahead of time, okay, days, and we'll get into the fire department here in a second, thank you, that there were fire conditions. Now, Kurt and Scott and Michelle, you're way brighter than I am, but as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a fire, and you and Kurt have these beautiful pictures behind you. Ready, audience? Don't you need water?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that kind of like a basic 101 that you need water? Tell us about the lack of water in Maui, because I want to get to Los Angeles. What happened in Maui? You talk about, I think, at page 130 of your book about that, not that I memorized it or anything, that where the expletive deleted for all the people watching with children and small pets at home, really for the small pets. What happened to the water in Maui?
The water was being diverted to one taro farmer, which is a potato farmer, downstream. And they actually said that they needed to get his permission to bring the water back to Lahaina. So it was burning down. The fire department's asking for more water. There's zero water coming out of the hydrants. And even somebody was actually saving their house and the water turned off. And so they finally got, I guess, permission at 6 p.m. But by that time, it was too late. And again, the reservoir in LA, was drained for months. And this was in Los Angeles to repair your guys' cover for your guys'.
It was a pool cover. I'm going to say it. They put out a bid afterwards. And by the way, sorry, I interrupt my guests a lot. Welcome to my show, Michelle. Okay, for everyone out there, let me make this very clear. And here's where the similarities come into play that I really want to dwell on, okay? Fires start. Acceptable, Scott and Kurt, Michelle, right? Fires start, it comes. And I've said many a time, it's government's basic job to protect our posteriors, okay? And we don't give a rodent's posterior about many of the issues that you talk about, but your basic job is to protect us against disasters. That includes when a fire comes, there should be water. In Maui's case, they had water, but a potato farmer apparently was holding it up, correct? So nobody had thought to put a clause in earlier that said break glass, damn the potatoes, okay, we're taking your water. Is that fairly correct?
Yeah, yeah. And do you, and I also want to talk,
Okay. In Los Angeles, hold on,
okay.
in LA, we had a really big reservoir that where we paid the head of DWP $450,000 or something per year. Kurt, correct me if I'm wrong. That's about the figure.
$750 for a DEI hire of Los
For a
Angeles
DEI
Department of Water and
hire,
Power.
okay, whose basic job, and for everybody out there, you know what DEI stands for. Kurt, what does DWP stand for?
Department of Water and Power.
Will
They're
you
in
say that
charge
second word
making sure
again
there
for
were
me louder? Water. Okay,
water,
so
WATER.
thank you very much. And they basically had a large reservoir that needed a $235,000 pool cover, or half the salary of the DEI hire of the DWP. Government loves their acronyms. And they let this go empty. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but seriously, nobody could drive by, and we wrote about this in Netter News. Subscribe to it, it's free, and you have that kind of money. There's my pitch. That could say this big swimming pool was empty. And how long, may I ask you, Michelle, did the potato farmer have rights to the water, first rights to water? How long was that? Kurt, you can give it, Scott, you can give us a picture of a potato.
Well, yeah, because it's a taro, but it's like a potato. You know, it's not the rights; they just gave it to him. This and the water, and the person that was in charge of the water of where the water was diverted. Nobody got fired, you guys. Like the person that didn't turn on the warning system, the person that with the water, the fire chief. I mean, the fire chief, the police chief, all of it. The fire chief didn't even know the fire was going on. He was off island, and the Hawaii state representative called him and said, "Should we evacuate?" And he goes, "Why?" She goes, "There's a fire in Lahaina." And he goes, "Let me call you back." And he finally calls her back a couple minutes later and says, "Yes, evacuate." You know, it's just like there's so many things that.
So where was your fire chief? Was on another island.
He was actually,
correct?
I believe he was in California, he was off island.
Well, that's great. Maybe they should have swapped jobs, because our mayor of Los Angeles was in Africa. Okay, yes, indeed, because there's nothing more important than an inauguration ceremony in Africa, and I want to dwell on this for 1 second. The basic job out there, California politicians, is California. It's not going to Africa for an inauguration ceremony. Gavin Newsom, it's not going to North or South or any Carolina outside of California worrying about what's going on. These are the similarities of the situation.
Yep.
Now, lack of water, lack of warning. How many people died in the Maui fire?
Supposedly, officially, they say 102 and 0 missing. However, that's absolutely impossible because there were people in the water, and the state representative told me that the wind was going so hard that if they had held on to something, they were going to be blown out to sea. I mean, they said 0 missing and 102 deaths, and that's I don't believe it at all. The death count went down. It went from 115 and then it dropped to 97. And what happened was, the reason was the governor said that the federal government came in and saw that they were accidentally counting the DNA twice. But here's the real thing that happened. The Maui Police Department was actually having recruits pick up human remains who had 0 experience, and they were putting the same human remains into one baggie, multiple human remains into one baggie. So
this goes back, I want to dwell on this point that's critically important here. stuff happens. And one of the things Hawaii, in my not so humble opinion, and California share is we are both states prone to disaster. And this isn't climate change. We have, and by the way, yes, there were a lot of, I want to get to our comments here. We got that. Maria Magdalena, great to see you. There were a lot of children missing too, correct?
Yeah, there was actually
Okay.
the Hawaii Education Department actually put out a chart that said 3,001 children were enrolled in the Lahaina Luna School District prior to the fire. After the fire, 538 re-enrolled in the school district, and then 438 were in private schools, but 2,025 children did not re-enroll in any school. So there's, I don't know.
And there we have a picture on screen of the culprit. The culprit in Hawaii and the culprit in Los Angeles is Karen Bass, as you can say. So the reality is,
That's the
say what?
This is a Sapeto farmer.
Oh, that's a Sapeto, but a taro is different. Taro is Taro, taro farmer.
Well, I'll tell you what, when we do a show on your health and dieting book, we'll cover that. In the meantime, and again, I am a big health nut for everybody out there, so I do want to stress that for 1 second. You should know the difference in eat right. However, I would also like to stress that you can eat right and diet as much as you want, and it doesn't matter if you're dead. And if the government don't help you during a disaster, your odds of being dead go up dramatically. Now, the good news is if you follow Michelle's diet and do the things that the 4 of us on this show do, you can run faster. That's maybe your only hope because the government doesn't do that well. Thank you very much. There's the culprit. So the government isn't prepared for things that we know are going to happen in both Maui and let's talk about the post-apocalypse disaster. Now, here's something I don't know. I may have missed that in your book, or I simply don't know it. And as you'll discover talking to me, there's a lot of things I don't know. Scott, please take that down. Our rating goes down by about 20% the longer you leave her up. Thank you very much. And by the way, we'll save that for the Halloween show. Did they do concerts over there? Did they do things? There was a big controversy. There always is, because all these groups come out. Be careful of who you contribute to. Scammers, as we technically call them. And I want to get to the big California scam because, hey, in California, our governor was actually running the scam. I don't know. Did you have that same situation in Hawaii where concerts and things were done where, Oprah Winfrey and people paid money? Did the money actually get to people, or does it go through a nonprofit first?
No, in fact, we do have things like Lahaina Strong, Maui Strong, but $3 billion have been given to Lahaina, to Hawaii State. And the Hawaii State representative was getting contractors that were contacting her because they were saying they weren't getting paid. So this money, she's asked for invoices, for receipts. She's getting absolutely ghosted. There is some type of money laundering going on because the tiny houses that the Lahaina fire victims are in, one tiny house cost $400,000. One tiny house. And they could have actually given that money to the Lahaina fire survivor to rebuild a permanent house, but instead they're in these tiny houses with glass and a lot of things.
Hold on. $3 billion and how many homes burned?
2,200 homes burned.
Okay. I want to do some quick math on my phone, but give people the idea. I want to drive home what Michelle's saying here. That's a lot of money per house. Hold on, I put in this is going to come as a shock to you. We don't have $3 billion on the show. In fact, we barely have $3. That's approximately, holy crap, that is about $1.3 million per structure.
Yep. In fact,
we don't know where that money went.
That's correct. I was there at Maui when the Congressman Ed Case was there asking the mayor of Maui, we're going to give you this money. What are you guys going to do with it? And the mayor says, oh, we're going to have a plan for it next month. So this was September of last year. when they had this meeting and the mayor was like, yeah, we'll have a plan next month of what we're going to do with the $3 billion that you're going to give us. But again, the Hawaii State Representative, Ellie Cochran, who was born in Lahaina, raised in Lahaina, lived in Lahaina, survived the fire, she's asking, where are the receipts? Where are the invoices? And they're not. The government is, or the Hawaii state government is totally being quiet, not responding to her.
Now, this is actually, I want to dive one layer deeper on this. First off, when did these fires take place?
August 8th, 2023.
Correct. Why do you think I'm asking that? Because on August 8th of 2023, the Democrats and Joe Biden were in charge of the federal government and handed out money, kind of like the homeless give money to me. Yes, they do when I walk down the street. You did hear that correctly. They're like, hey, you got it worse than I do. Or Halloween candy. So the government simply, federal government, handed $3 billion to Hawaii that they can't track. Where Donald Trump right now is saying California need to be accountable for it. But you guys do win. I hate to say Hawaii beats California, although Gavin Newsom simply held concerts. And Scott, could you put that picture back up of Gavin and his not so lovely wife?
Sure.
Not to be confused with his campaign manager's wife, who
Correct.
he cheated with.
They ran a concert in Los Angeles, gathered a large amount of money, opened an NGO, which we used to call a nonprofit, like we used to call it Bernie Madoff, but let's put that down for a second, gathered all this money, took the money in the NGO, and again, the same thing, but a smaller amount so far, because Donald Trump isn't letting him play with our tax dollars, and we don't know where the money went. Big similarities. So the point of it here, you can take that down because I do have to eat after the show, Scott, and I can only look at Gavin and his wife for so long. Okay.
And Netter, I want to say one more thing too. Did you guys know that a fraction of the $7.5 billion bond from 2014 for capturing water in LA was spent? Only a little bit of the $7.5 billion bond. You guys had a bond to capture water in Los Angeles for fires.
Yes, 100%. We vote in a bond. No one knows where the money went. Our water bills have gone up. And that's a whole other show to do there. The point is, how can you not afford to? And the point I'm driving at here for everybody, and I really want you to gather what I opened the show with. And I know I seem like, well, that Netter may not be in his meds tonight. How are all these subjects tying together? It's all about the money. Now, I say quite often, whether it's evil or it's inept, the scoreboard is the same. I've used this metaphor many a time. And Michelle, you may have not heard use it. Scott and Kurt certainly have, to the point where they probably want to shoot me. That's okay, and it's barely a misdemeanor in Los Angeles these days. Okay? Whether it's manslaughter or murder, the dude on the sidewalk is still dead. Right? Whether it's inept or evil or intentional ineptness, these disasters are quite profitable for the people that are in power. Quite profitable. Thank you, Magdalena. Shout out here for KPSF Radio broadcasting us tonight. Excellent. So be aware that these things, there's going to be a fire in Maui. It's not the first one. There's going to be a fire in Los Angeles. And there's a lot I love about your book, especially because I love Maui. I've been over there about a dozen times. But when you read this and you go into this, the depths of similarities are striking.
Yeah.
And here, you don't know what's scary? Is that Scott?
Yeah, I'm here.
Scott. Okay, I'll get it back. Stella! Okay. Where is Los Angeles going for advice as to what they should do post-fire?
to Maui.
Yeah. Doesn't that strike anybody as a wee bit strange? Doesn't it strike anybody as a wee bit strange that the metro in San Francisco, which has been losing more money than Bernie Madoff, yes, that reference again, lost for his customers, has given advice to LA Metro how they should model their system? San Francisco has a high crime rate, so let's talk to San Francisco. I really got to wonder, Michelle, weigh in on this. Do you think our politicians in both Hawaii and California, those Democrats, are really that inept or stupid? Or are they actually taking tips on how they can screw this up and screw this up again? Because if I was to sum up your book, I would say, I see a lot of, how could you be that dumb?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, I just was off air right before we got on. I was telling your your co-host, that our governor has signed 9 emergency proclamations suspending 32 laws right now. And one of those emergency proclamations is because we don't have enough school buses. And he's suspending sunshine law, procurement laws, competitive bidding. So these people are evil. They're absolutely evil, bringing in the New World Order, basically communism. That's what they're wanting to do. They just passed a law in Hawaii where they put in a biosecurity office into the Hawaii Ag Department, which means they can come in now to anybody's private property, confiscate their property, confiscate their livestock, confiscate their food or whatever else they want under the guise of biosecurity, safety for other people, because you have contaminated soil, a beetle, mold. They can even check your luggage at the airport now on the guise of biosecurity. So we're working hard here in Hawaii to try and stop this communist agenda that's coming through. But it's not easy, and a lot of it also is coming through people's general plans, which I highly recommend they look through. Big Island, I live on the Big Island, and we've been fighting our general plan, which wants to bring in those 15-minute cities, clustered housing. They want to turn important agriculture land into natural land, no building, no farming, no people. So we've been fighting it for a year. We are making some headway though, so that's a good thing.
Well, and Casey, and by the way, Casey, I see you out there. Yes, they've laundered it all. I'm looking at some of the comments. Yes, August is the time for fires. I think one of the things that's interesting here when we talk about, and I look, everybody out there, I get after a while, I go like, really? Could some of these, and I'm not saying Democrats, but the core people who are running the Democrat Party, okay? I do start to really believe they're that evil, because here's what I think. You go to San Francisco, which has a big name, but it's a substantially smaller city in LA. See what you can get away with. Look what we've gotten away with San Francisco. Let's scale it up. And they do things in Hawaii, which is substantially smaller than California. And let's try to scale it up. Let's try next for California, why we can. That falls to me out of the inept to the evil category. Michelle, you live on the Big Island, right?
Yes.
Do you live on the Kona or the Hilo side?
Kona side.
Okay, the beautiful side. Sorry, Hilo. Okay. So do you go over to Maui at all?
Yeah, I do. I go over there.
Let's talk about sorry. I want you to give me a 2-3 minute spiel when you go over there, because again, I'm speaking from experience. How are the people in Maui doing? How are their everyday lives going? All this money's come in. How's it going for you? How's it working out?
It's challenging for most of them. There have been people that have gotten permits to rebuild, but again, like I said, 0 businesses, 0 places on the coast. You guys, they put up a 5-mile long dust screen, 12 feet high. They put it up within 2 weeks after the fire. You couldn't stop and take pictures. They put in a no-fly zone. You couldn't fly drones. You couldn't go in. Media couldn't go into the fire, the burn zone for a month. Media was locked out. homeowners were locked out for 90 days, and they had actually security guards at the entrances to Lahaina for 18 months. For 18 months, you could not go into Lahaina unless you had a placard that said you had land there. And then the security guard at the checkpoint said no pictures and no video. So that's, freedom of speech, freedom of the press gone. Why? Why would they do that? What other disaster in the world does that? So it's a lot of questions. And
Scott, can you see? So today, if I looked at Lahaina and the area around it, Scott, do you have a picture of the Pacific Palisades today?
Yeah.
Let's bring that up.
This one is Maui.
That's Maui today.
Yes.
All right. Take a look at that one. Let's bring up the Pacific Palisades.
Give me a second.
I will.
The picture that I had of the mayor of Maui was when he promised to look at an independent auditor as to Maui's response and cause of the fire. Did anything ever come of that, Michelle?
That was the biggest joke ever. It was like the Maui fire department actually did a whole report, and they spent 10 minutes when they shared it. They spent 10 minutes saying how great they all were, and then in the report, all their names were redacted off of it. The auditor, I haven't seen it. It's not much has come of it. They still are saying this was a natural fire. You guys, the fire went against the wind. The fire went against the wind. It moved. It jumped over a construction site with exposed 2x4s, and it melted the cars in the parking lot next to it, leaving the trees fully intact. So it's like, this was not normal. And I do want to let people know, if you think this is conspiracy, please look up Direct Energy Weapons System Acquisition Act through Congress in 2016. In 2016, there was a Direct Energy Weapons Systems Acquisition program that took the Direct Energy Weapons program from the Defense Department and gave it to Congress. People's tax dollars helped to fund and complete the Direct Energy Weapons Systems program. And this was because the Defense Department believed that since the 1960s, even though they've spent $6 billion on Direct Energy Weapons program, they couldn't bring it to fruition. So Congress took it over in 2016 and finished it. Your tax dollars helped to complete it. And there's many thousands of direct energy weapon patents.
Well, yeah, and I want to not go down that rabbit hole. For a simple term, I studied a lot of physics, okay? And that has nothing to do with whether or not the government is doing it, but whether or not about direct energy program. Take a look, Scott, what is that?
It's the side of Pacific Palisades day after the fire.
Here's what I find absolutely amazing. And Michelle, I want to kind of roll to the end of your segment here, so you kind of have to give us a lot of your time here tonight, okay? Direct energy has been around since the beginning of time, kind of like climate change. You know what we call it? Sunlight. Yes, indeed, we call it sunlight, because when sunlight beams down, the atmosphere filters it, which is why we don't look like expletive deleted Venus, okay? And when sunlight comes down, and here's a big shocker for everybody, and we have a year where it doesn't rain. Oh my God, it's climate change. Well, we call it July, yahoos, but that's okay. Let's roll with that. Yes, the weather is different than it is in January. Stuff get hot and it burned. This isn't this just in, okay? And there's all kinds of shiny objects that distract us. But here's the bottom line. The people in government, yes, I see the comments, Newsom and his wife, the mayor of Maui, who I'm going to guess when he finishes his term is going to buy a really big place. The homes in Lahaina, like I ended up doing with my lot, you can't afford to rebuild because those permits never really materialize. They vaporize, all puns intended. It's really hard to rebuild your house. And so those people over there, for most of us, we haven't built the house. We bought a house that was already built. And the government doesn't make it easy to rebuild because they don't give a damn. Michelle, I want you to give me two major takeaways that you think Maui could do right now to rebuild that community in the next 6 months, since we're 2 years after fire. Give me two. I'm putting you on the spot.
I think that people need to contact the people in numbers. We're talking thousands of people together contacting their legislative body, and we got to make a stink. Even if we're sitting outside of the Capitol, thousands of people sitting outside saying we need to rebuild this. That's one of them. The other one is, I'm a huge proponent of God, of spirituality, and of checking in with your higher power and what does your heart tell you to do and following that. That's why I wrote this book, because I kept going, what can I do? And I kept following my guided intuition. Those two things for all of us. We have to stop these attacks in numbers. We sent an affidavit, a 17-page affidavit to the governor after the fire, saying why an outside company should be investigating this. And we sent it to him, to the state representatives, but we need thousands of people.
And where can we find, this is a very important point. And by the way, I'm a man of God too, for the record, but facetiously, when we put on the air, Newsom thinks that's him. Okay, so let's put that down for 1 second. But I think, first off, I talk all the time about digital advocacy. All of you have a cell phone. Even if your home has burned, you make sure to get out with your cell phone. Okay, and digital advocacy, you can contact in numbers your legislature and get people to do that. But let's talk about lawsuits. I think the affidavits, and Kirk, can you weigh in on this before we let Michelle go? What kind of lawsuits do you think have not been filed against the government for not providing the proper infrastructure to defend us?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm more familiar with the Los Angeles case. I'll defer to our guest.
No, same thing. Well, you choose Los Angeles. What do you think?
But in Palisades, that clearly there was gross negligence in not refilling the reservoir, whether there's a top or not, at the top of the Palisades, because their fire system was based on gravity. You fill the reservoir at the top of the hill, water runs down to the fire hydrants. There's water to put out the fire. So the DEI hire at the Department of Water and Power should be sued personally for gross negligence. The city should be sued for gross negligence. There was an attempt by the legislature to take all that land and convert it to low-income housing. The government should be sued for any of those things. It's impossible to imagine how awful the governance is. And so at some point, you've got to ask yourself a question. When is something negligence? When is it gross negligence? And when is it reckless? And in the law, if there's recklessness, you impute intent. And that means everybody who was injured or killed, the family of the people who killed, could sue them as accessories to murder.
Yeah.
Interesting. Everyone out there, Michelle, thank you. And again, there's a lot of kinds of lawsuits which have not been filed yet. And I won't go into the personal ones we were able to file. Kurt brings up a very important point. I want to drive this home before we let Michelle go. It's easy for the lawyers, which we all call sharks, and not always a bad shark, right? To sue the utility companies, which started the fire which burned my house. The lawyers know the utility companies have insurance and will eventually settle. For any of you political advocates out there, be highly aware, to Kurt's point, some of us at some point are going to have to sue the government, both in Hawaii, both on the state level and local level, and both in Los Angeles and California, because what you see on the screen in front of you is what we're facing, because somebody knew. And although government practices immunity, they don't have it in all cases. Mm-hmm. Now, in my Netter News this morning, there are links to Michelle's book. Yes, you can use my name and get a discount, which I highly recommend you do. But I want to stress again that I really recommend, first off, read this, because our audience out there needs to become healthy again. And the inside stories, I work with Make America Healthy Again at the highest level, because none of you as fans are any good to me if you're dead. And I want to see you out there protesting, and you have to get moving. That aside, the main core of our show is this. There is a great land grab going on. There's a chipping away happening at the very fabric of our life. In my newsletter, Netter News, Google it, and on our feeds that we put out in the show prep are details of how you can find. Michelle, do you have any closing words before we let you go?
I just want to say mahalo nui loa. Thanks so much for having me. The book website is greatmauilandgrabbook.com, Great Maui Land Grab Book.
Scrolling on your screen.
And you can get it on Amazon. But biggest thing is you guys stay strong. I really feel this world is a game. And I feel each one of us is here for a reason and that God wins in the end. But we do need to do our part. We can't sit by the wayside and expect other people to take the stick and run with it. We have to step up. We have to say no. We have to say, we see you, we see what you're doing. And I love that you guys are with this show, you're doing that. So thank you so much.
Michelle, thank you very much. Maybe we'll sell the franchise for nothing to Hawaii Free Radio. That doesn't have quite the same ring. We'll work on that. Thank you very much for coming on. Everybody get out there, pay attention, read the book and the similarities between it, and you'll start to see it's not always a conspiracy theory when it's actually true. Michelle, thank you very much for coming on. Look forward actually, hopefully, to seeing you in Maui, because it's going to be way better for me to go over. We'll work that out later. Okay, because I love the beaches over there. Thanks, you.
Michelle. Hey, one of the things we didn't really get into is, they had their 2-year anniversary. They have one house built, and I'm sitting there looking at some of this information, and that's why I had put up the picture of the mayor of Maui. He instead is going after 6,200 different short-term lodging locations. Read that as Airbnb places. So rather than focusing on rebuilding, he's trying to shut down individuals who are renting their houses out on a short-term basis. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think Hawaii's their biggest industry is tourism. And you would think that providing more ways for tourists to go there is a good thing for their economy.
But yes, and again, this goes back to what I want to get to, an important subject here, that, yes, you're absolutely correct. Maui's doing it. Los Angeles is still screaming about raising the minimum wage where people have nowhere to live. Bass is screaming about, oh my God, we've arrested some more felons today who are illegal immigrants. Newsom's screaming about other stuff. In the meantime, and again, speaking from experience, when your house burns, there are not Hallmark cards for it. It's kind of a very strange, surreal experience. There's a large.
You're saying, are you complaining because there's no Hallmark cards?
Well, I'm just saying
that there's no way for people to.
What I'm saying is, when you have an anniversary, when you get married, even if someone dies, you get a card for the anniversary of it. I get it, no big deal. But my point is, when your house burns, it fades from people's memories fairly quickly. Whatever happened to the Netters, the Joneses, those other families who we never saw again? Why was that? What happened to the neighborhoods? The entire fabrics of communities change because the government is smart enough or evil enough to do nothing instead of doing what they say they would do. And people start to pay their attention to things like they're doing today, which is a good way for us to get into some of the stories this week, because those are the stories that the press writes about it and occasionally writes the follow-up. To your point, Scott, it's been 2 damn years. Marriott Hotels, when their hotel burned over there, frankly doesn't give a damn. They're Marriott Hotels. They'll be just fine. The people that own the homes around Marriott Hotels will not. And the people that pay attention to the people who, whatever happened to that money that we gave, get distracted by the shiny stories. Kurt, some of the shiny stories this week are.
Well, very interesting. There's a fellow named Shiloh Marks. Are you familiar with him, gentlemen?
Very familiar with him.
And he is suing to get rid of inactive voters. And now the judge in Riverside County has set a trial date for his lawsuit after the county in Riverside has denied they've done anything wrong in failing to purge their voter records. So shout out to Shiloh Marks.
A shout out to Shiloh Marks, and having been involved with some of these lawsuits, election integrity, and I want people to hear this, is we did this in Los Angeles, but you need to make sure, and Kurt, this is a good follow-up for a conversation for you as a lawyer later, that you get them taken off the system, but then there's no cure for keeping them off the system. So we did this in Los Angeles about 5 years ago, went through the courts. We got 1.3 million voters returned. We watched on our Rebuild California, which is why we say donate to us. I'm going to be the TV preacher tonight. We do studies like this. Find the inactive voters, take them off the rolls, and the rolls go right back up again. Next story, Kurt.
All right. Well, apparently in Oceanside Unified School District, they have a new policy where if a student turns in an assignment, no matter how late, they get an automatic 50%, and a student can do 10% of the work and graduate. This is a story brought to us by our friend Amy Reichart, who's doing great work in San Diego County.
Well, that'll work out well in our public schools, which is another reason we had the new version of school choice. Kevin McNamee from the CEO Act on about a month and a half ago. We need to give kids the option. Keep going, Kurt. We're going to give you about 3 or 4 more stories and then roll.
All right. Well, apparently Gavin Newsom's wife is getting millions to her nonprofit of taxpayer dollars. And then is this money being laundered, Mike and Scott, into Gavin's campaign, into their household account? Or is she just using it to castrate children? Where is the money going?
Well, we're going to have Jennifer Van Laar and some other people on soon, because the reality is Gavin Newsom, although he has all these vineyards and made all this money, which doesn't make any sense, the vineyards aren't this big, and the other vineyard owners are going broke, has a $4 million house, a $9 million house, paid for in cash. We're not sure where the money came. And yes, Jennifer is scamming money off the government. That's a whole show, but 100% absolutely. And in fact, as we talked about related to the fires, they held a big fire concert, whatever they called it, Fire Aid, and no one knows where the money is because it went to a newly created charity that's supposed to benefit Indians, which what they have to do with the fire, I'm not quite too sure.
Wait a second.
Well, but Mike,
Indians started the fire or what?
Don't know.
No.
But Mike, Gavin Newsom isn't the only one stealing money. There was a Los Angeles city councilman named Curran Price, a Democrat, who's been charged with embezzling $800,000.
Oh, he's been continuously charged. And Kurt, sorry to jump on you, because this is what I said last night in our feed, personal feed. This has been in Netter News. Can I jump on this story real quick? Because this one pisses me off for a couple different reasons. One, if you're going to embezzle money and your name is Curran Price, don't do it. Are you going up with the Price is Right? Did you run for office because your name was Price and you were offering your stuff for sale? Seriously, what really ticks me off, the mainstream press didn't cover this. Yes, they covered that Curran Price has been charged. He just got 3 more charges dropped on him the other day. But what they didn't cover is about 2 months ago, as they were protesting to up the minimum wage for the hotel workers who will simply be out of work in Los Angeles. You know who was out there that the press was focused on, leading the charge? Guess, Kurt.
I'll be the straight man. Who, Mike?
Curran Price. Curran Price is out there protesting, and the television station KTLA5, KABC TV, not my radio station, did not mention once that this guy they're interviewing is up on corruption charges. Nothing to see here. Kirk, give me one more story.
All right, this makes me really angry.
Is it a Dodger story? Is that why?
Yeah, the UCLA student,
Yes.
Jamie Han, a Chinese national, was speaking at the UCLA graduation, cursing ICE and the Trump administration, to the approval of UCLA bigwigs that were sitting on the stage. It's outrageous that a foreigner is trashing our country. Kick her out. And remember, for a Chinese national to be in the United States in one of our universities, like the 280,000 others, they have to be willing to spy for the CCCP. Kick them all out, gentlemen. Kick them all out of our country.
And by the way, because although you don't want to talk about the Dodgers, we're in second place.
They'll be fine when they get their 5 relief pitchers off of the injured list.
They might be, but the Padres already have 10 healthy ones. We'll take that up on our sports segment on another show. Okay, but here's the
Mike,
thing.
who are the world champions? Who are the world champions? And how many world championships does San Diego ever have? That would be none.
Well, we know they have none, but Kurt, let's face it, we're due. Which, by the way, is why I'm a Republican. We're due to have a Republican governor. And we could get a Republican governor and a Padres World Championship in the same year. Who knows? But let's go back.
Reagan was a Dodger fan, and we won plenty when he was around.
Hold on. Let's
Lightning
go back
Ken
to this. UCLA has been fined $1 billion, that's with a B, by the federal government. They have been convicted on a lot of things, and they knew it was coming, and they still let this Chinese student rant and rave on stage when they've just been, in effect, convicted for anti-Semitism. I was actually on the campuses when this was going on, and I'll leave it at that. Kurt, it's amazing.
Would you like some good news, Mike? I have some good news.
Sure, why not? What do you got that's good news?
Donald Trump has banned debanking, meaning taking away credit cards and bank accounts based on your conservatism or your Christianity, which was going on during the Biden administration.
Yep. Donald Trump is they're struggling what they have to bitch about, which is why they're distracting us with shiny objects. I put out my feed this morning. Kurt, thanks, because the bottom line is most Americans, Democrat, Republican, it's kind of working out. I know they talk about the polls, etc., but the reality is the stock market seems to be hitting a record high. Things seem to be going quite well. The tariffs are bringing in money, and I frankly haven't seen my prices go up too much. Okay.
Now,
Scott.
Mike, one more thing. California earlier this week had 15 fires burning in Malibu, in Porter Ranch, in Granada Hills, where they didn't have enough water. Didn't they learn anything? Earlier in our segment, we talked about the Maui fires, we talked about the Palisades and the Altadena fires. They've learned nothing, Mike. Nothing.
Nope, and they don't want to, because again, we need to do almost a whole show with the disaster expert. That's one reason I wanted to have on Michelle on tonight. She at least has written a book that I do recommend you reading that researches a lot of things that we don't get the chance to hear about. Scott, roll me with a couple things here.
So we're talking fires. I wanted to relate, I posted this earlier. I have a client in the Pacific Palisades. They have 75 apartments. They were underinsured. And so 75, we're trying to figure out a way. Basically, they're going to have to come up with $5 million to invest in a redevelopment to get their 75 units back. So obviously they have to evaluate whether or not, hey, can I get my money out of it or not, right? And they figure, okay, they'll build it bigger, better, not necessarily more units, but better amenities. They'll get higher rent. There'll be modern apartments, 9-foot ceilings, much better than the 60-year-old apartments that burned down. And but the state, along with the city, are basically saying, oh, wait a minute. You have to offer that apartment that burned down at the same price that the guy was paying rent on before to all of your previous tenants. So if they were getting, and they were getting decent rent, $4,000 a month for an apartment, and maybe after the fire, after they rebuild it, after they make it a super duper apartment, they can rent it for $5,000 a month, and that would pay back that extra $5 million of investment that they're going to have. But then instead, what happens? They come down with this regulation saying, no, you got to rent to the same guy at $4,000 a month. And they're kind of like, well, we can't afford to build it. And so they're going to end up probably pocketing the insurance money, walking away from the site or selling it for what they can. And the insurance money, I say pocketed, basically the lender's going to get it all. and they're going to try and sell the site because they won't be able to afford to develop it.
And I
And,
was
and those kinds of restrictions, they just can't do it.
No, and I was
Yes.
actually at an LA tax thing. I serve on the board of LA Tax, where we had a kind of a private panel with 5 of the major developers earlier this week. I tweeted out a couple pictures from it. It's run by Nemazium and Aiden John Crookshank's on the board with me, along with my buddy Drew. They talked about this very thing. It's almost like LA is really like, we really don't give a damn. And it's amazing. This goes back to, and this is going on for years, guys. You're just not involved with it. These developers are going, look, you go to downtown LA, who the hell would even want to rebuild in some of these places? At least clean the drug idiots up off the street. They don't do it. And we have the Olympics coming. This is going to be a disaster.
Oh, I
Okay,
think
But guys,
Trump's
there's
coming in and taking it over. But my point is that the regulations are killing it. Some conspiracy guys would sit there and say they're doing it on purpose because they want to buy that property and they want to develop their own homeless shelter there at $1 million a door, which is,
And I
4 times.
think there's a lot of ring of truth to it. Kurt, roll me and I'll roll us to the end here.
2 important milestones today. Today is the 80th anniversary of the surrender of Japan, ending World War II. God bless our World War II veterans, the ones still alive and the ones not with us anymore. And
Also-
today is
also
Clint
the
Eastwood's
anniversary of the bomb.
95th. Clint Eastwood's 95th birthday today. Happy birthday, Clint!
Oh, I didn't know that. God
My
bless.
son's
Clint.
birthday, too.
Look, everyone out there, God bless our vets. Thank you very much. God bless Clint Eastwood, who's a real American. Now I'm going to ask you something. I want you to step up there and be a real American and be a real Californian. Because again, most of the input that you get is fed to you by the mainstream media. Tonight, we're trying to show you people that go looking for information. We go looking for information too. And when we give it to you, like on California Free Radio, we're doing that to empower you. Smash and grab? That you think that's a jewelry store robbery? Let me tell you something. Smash and grab politics, led by Gavin Newsom and in the Los Angeles area by Karen Bass and up and down the state of California, is led by Democratic politicians. And no longer is it taking place behind closed doors. They're doing it because they know or they think you won't pay attention or do something about it. We encourage you to do something about it. Become a digital warrior. Spread the word. Get people to watch your show. Contribute to groups like ours. But whatever you are, do, if all of you out there, and I'm amazed at the number of people, of thousands, literally, approaching a big numbers, watch the show. If every one of you do one thing, make one phone call, one thing per day, we can do something. Because if not, they are going to rip California out from underneath you and spread to the rest of the country. And it's your state, and it's up to you to keep that from happening while you're empowered to do it. God bless you. Thank you. Good night. We'll be back next week. Take us out.
All right, gentlemen, have a great one.